Hey YouTube, Twig here, bringing you all an update to my Exosisters Yugioh deck profile for post Power of the Elements. We got a new main deck effect monster and a new trap in the latest Power of the Elements set. I know that Exosister Martha is a secret rare, so a little more difficult for people to want to get a hold of. For this deck, I think it might be the most highest rarity card that this deck has had to offer, with the last one being Exosisters Magnifica, which was released in Dimension Force. I did mean to make an update for the deck from that set, but I figured with new support just around the corner in the new Power of the Elements set, I would just hold off until we got all the new updated support, which definitely did help to add to the overall playstyle. So a lot of people do have some pretty big expectations for this deck overall in the meta. So let's go ahead and get started with the deck profile. So the deck definitely does have a big play aspect on just being able to make use of your opponent's graveyard every time they move a card from it, being able to special summon out Xyz monsters on top of your Exosister monsters. So for our lineup, we're running 3 Exosister Ellis. The Exosister monsters also work in tandem with one of the other monsters in the deck. Ellis, if you control an Exosister monster, you can special summon this card from your hand. Then if you control an Exosister Stella, you can gain 800 life points. If your opponent controls or moves a card out of either graveyard, except during the damage step, you can special summon this card from your extra deck, one Exosister Xyz monster, using this face-up card you control as material. And then this material is treated as an Xyz summon. You can only use this effect of Ellis once per turn. So the good majority of the Exosister monsters share this Xyz play every time a card is moved out of either graveyard, if your opponent moves it, except during the damage step. Being able to use the multiple Exosister monsters on the field to go into Xyz plays definitely is powerful. And the card that combos with Ellis is Exosister Stella. During your main phase, you can special summon one Exosister monster from your hand, and if you control an Exosister Ellis, you can gain 800 life points. If your opponent moves a card out of either graveyard, having the same Xyz play like I spoke of before, I'm not going to repeat it. It's the exact same play for the good majority of the cards, but Stella just giving you a special summon from the hand is why it's another 3 of, and just being able to summon Ellis makes it a special summon that you can then use with your 2 monsters to then go into 2 separate Xyz monsters on the field. For the new monster, I am running 3 Exosister Martha. If you control no monsters, or all monsters you control are Xyz monsters, you can special summon this card from your hand. And if you do special summon one Exosister Ellis from your deck, you cannot special summon except this turn, except for Exosister monsters. And if a card is moved out of either graveyard from your opponent, except during the damage step, being able to special summon from the extra deck just like the other one. So Ellis is the first one that we mentioned before. Being able to have both of these cards work together is a big part of the play, because cards like Exosister Packs work with having 2 different names in the different Exosister monsters that you summoned out, meaning Martha has and is one of the other target for that card, and also the traps that we run, like the new Exosister Returnia. And for some of the lower numbers for the Exosister monsters, I also run 2 Exosister Sophia. If you control another Exosister monster, you can draw 1 card. Then if you control Exosister Irene, gain 800 life points. If your opponent moves a card out of the graveyard, except during the damage step, you can special summon from your extra deck 1 Exosister Xyz monster using this face-up card you control as material, just like the other ones. It's a 2 of because you can set it up with some of the other spells that we run in the deck much more easily. And it works with Exosister Irene, which, unlike Ellis, Martha, and Stella, is good, but it's just more of a particular setup card. So if you want the cards to work together, you just needed to adjust those numbers because of it. So I'm running just the 1 Exosister Irene for the last of the Exosister main deck cards, being able to place 1 Exosister card from your hand on the bottom of the deck to draw 1 card. So it is an investment for that 1 card. You're really not plussing off of this card when you use it, but being able to gain 800 life points if you control Exosister Sophia on the field, and also being able to use it as an Xyz material if your opponent moves a card out of either graveyard. And then for the rest of the monsters for the main deck, I run 3 Ash Blossom and Joy Spring and 3 Effect Veiler. Just hand traps of choice to shut down a good number of cards your opponent may have on the field. If you wanted to try cards like Droll and Lockbird, you can always take out the Effect Veiler for that spot. I was thinking of also running Dimension Shifter. If you didn't want to take out the Effect Veiler, I do have a trap that I'm running in the deck that you can move for that additional spot to run Dimension Shifter as well, which we'll get to when I go over the trap cards. Moving on now to the spells, I run 3 Exosister packs. During the main phase, you can pay 800 life points to add 1 Exosister card from your deck to your hand, except for Exosister packs. Then, if you added a monster by this effect, you can special summon it if the other Exosister monster mentioned on it is on your field or in your graveyard. So all these work well together because Ellis and Stella, and then Martha and Ellis work together, just like your Sophia and Irene. So if you have those monsters on the field, packs can set up another monster on the field, giving you an additional 800 life point gain, depending on if its effects met the requirements, and giving you another monster to summon out for more Xyz plays also. For some of the lower numbers for the spells, I also run 2 Exosister Armament. With this card, you pay 800 life points, then target 1 Exosister monster you control. Special summon 1 Exosister Xyz monster from your extra deck with a different name than the cards you control with this card by using it as material. This is treated as an Xyz summon and transfer the materials onto that summoned monster. You can only activate 1 Exosister Armament per turn, and you can only activate this card during your opponent's turn unless your opponent controls a monster special summon from the graveyard. It's a requirement that takes a little more difficulty to make, but can easily be done if you have those requirements. It's not that hard to special summon a monster from the graveyard to make use of with this card, but I still feel it's only a 2 of because you have a much easier special summon play with cards like Exosister packs. And then for the 1-ofs for the spells, I run 1 Dimensional Fissure. Banishing is a big part of the Xyz monster play lineup, but Dimensional Fissure can also help just by getting rid of any particular monsters your opponent may have. And the 1 Call by the Grave for being able to shut down more of your opponent's searches and to make sure some of your own searches go off, including the ones with your Exosister packs for the special summon or any of the special summon power or draw power that some of the other Exosisters may have. I also run for the trap lineup, moving on to the traps now, 3 of the Exosister Vadis. You pay 800 life points to choose 1 Exosister monster from your deck, then take 1 other Exosister monster from your deck that is mentioned on that monster and special summon both, but shuffle them back into the deck during the end phase. Also, for the rest of this turn, after this card resolves, you cannot special summon except for Exosister monsters. So you can definitely play off of this card if your opponent's going to summon from the graveyard, giving you a resource to then special summon the 2 Exosister monsters onto the field, which great with the Exosister Martha is it has Ellis in its name, so you can summon this card out into the field, and then Ellis as well, and then rely on both of those monsters to then, if your opponent moves a card out of the graveyard, to overlay into 2 new Xyz monsters on the field using those cards, and since they were brand new monsters, they won't be shuffled back into the deck because of it. They'll just be brand new monsters, and you won't have to worry about that shuffle back, but it can either stop your opponent from using any of their graveyard plays they were going to do for that turn, or they'll still do it, and you won't lose out of your monsters. For the new Exosister trap, I am running 3 Exosister Returnia. If all monsters you control are Exosister monsters, minimum 1, pay 100 life points, target 1 card your opponent controls or in their graveyard, banish it, then you can apply one of these effects. Immediately after this effect resolves, Xyz summon 1 Exosister Xyz monster using monsters you control, or if you Xyz summon previously this turn, banish 1 card your opponent controls. It's an additional banish on top of the other banish you may have done from one of their cards with this card, or even giving you an Exosister Xyz. It's a definite 3 of being the new trap in the deck, and you can only activate 1 per turn, but definitely work it. It can work very, very well with cards comboed like Exosister Vadis. If your opponent isn't going to do the graveyard play, you can use Returnia to at least make that play happen with your own cards. And for the other traps that I run in the deck, I also run 3 different dimension ground. This turn, any monster sent to the graveyard is banished instead. This is the spot I mentioned that you could take out for Dimension Shifter. Dimension Shifter is definitely a faster played card, being able to use it during the standby phase against your opponent, and also the fact that you have to set up different dimension ground on the field to activate. But once again, just a player preference. If you don't have the Dimension Shifters, I would say different dimension ground is a much more readily obtainable card to use in the deck. For some of the other traps, the majority of the monsters that we summon out onto the field in this deck are light attributes, so I am running 3 Gozen Match, and the good majority of the extra deck monsters we're running as well are light monsters, so just being able to have it so each player can only control 1 attribute of a monster and send all the other ones to the graveyard is a great lineup, because you'll have your own monsters and more cards that your opponent just can't go into depending on the deck you're playing against. With the last of the traps that I run in the deck just being 3 infinite impermanence, once again just being able to stop your opponent's monster effects by controlling no cards on the field, activating it from your hand. So if your opponent goes go first, you have the Ash Blossom, the Effect Veiler, and the infinite impermanence to rely on. And that is it for the main deck. We'll now move on to the extra deck. For our boss monster, I'm running 2 Exosisters Magnifica, 2 rank 4 Exosister Xyz monsters. I needed to make this card. It must be Xyz summoned with the above materials. This card can make a second attack during each battle phase. And once per turn quick effect, you can detach 1 material from this card to banish 1 card your opponent controls. And when your opponent activates a card effect or quick effect, you can return 1 Xyz monster you own attached to this card to your extra deck. Then you can special summon the monster from your extra deck by using this card you control as material. This is the swap out power that I mentioned from Magnifica, being able to detach 1 off Magnifica, returning it to the extra deck, then just overlaying that brand new monster with a brand new monster ability onto this card to use, with this card being the resource needed to have banished 1 of your opponent's cards, but still have resources to continue the play on the following turn by having a second Magnifica to go into after you have another Xyz monster to use to overlay into it. For the other rank 4 Exosister monsters, I run 2 Exosister Michaelis. I thought of running 3 of this card. It's great. It has the option of shutting down a lot of cards your opponent may try to use in the graveyard. It cannot be destroyed by monsters. Special summon from the graveyard in battle, and you can only use each of the following effects once per turn. If you control this card that was Xyz summoned using an Exosister monster as material, you can target 1 card your opponent controls in their graveyard, banish it, and you can detach 1 from this card to add 1 Exosister spell or trap from your deck to your hand, setting up more and more of the trap and spell plays that you want to use with this deck. If you were to run a 3rd copy of this card, I would take out 1 copy of the next card, and that is Exosister Yugioh. It's a pretty good card, but it just has an attack boost mostly with this card, being able to use that play to also target an effect monster your opponent controls and negates effects. You have Infinite Impermanence and Ash Blossom in the deck, doing that at a much better pace, so if you wanted to, you could put in a 3rd copy of Michaelis and take out 1 of the Yugioh. I also run 2 Exosister Asophiel with this card, being able to target 1 monster your opponent controls and return to the hand. Being able to bounce back an extra deck monster is especially scary with this card, and if it's Xyz summon, neither player can activate card or effects in the graveyard this turn. So if you can get out Asophiel on your opponent's turn, that's just more shutdown right then and there. Even after you use your 1 trap, that 1 graveyard play might not be all they needed, so just being able to have that activated play and then go into this card is immensely powerful and just shutting down your opponent. With the last of the Exosister monsters just being 2 Exosister Caspatel, with this card being able to detach 1 to add 1 Exosister monster from your deck to your hand, it's a definite 2 of because it's a monster search on top of your Michaelis being the spell and trap card search. And then for the Link monsters, I run 1 Artemis, the Magistus Moon Maiden. For the Link 1 plays of just a level 4 lower spellcaster monster, you can go into a Link 1 setup with this card with any of the spellcasters that we run. 1 Hip Hoshinengen and 1 Lena the Light Charmer for the light attribute plays and to not be shut out by Gozen Match, along with 1 Selene, Queen of the Master Magicians. This is so you can go into your access code play. I know access code is a dark attribute monster, but it's still a great one to have access to, no pun intended, in the deck to use for destruction and just basically finishing your opponent with that OTK play against them with access code Talker, hitting some pretty big numbers when you use the Selene play and having the additional Xyz monster on the field as well. As for some of the go-to plays in the deck, with the new setup that you can do with your Exosister Returnia, if all monsters you control are Exosister monsters, minimum 1, being able to pay 100 life points, target 1 card your opponent controls and banish it, or even just being able to go off of the special summon play of Exosister Vadis, giving you the 2 Exosister monsters on the field with the required names, Ellis and Martha, since Martha is the new one we are running. And then when your opponent moves a card out of the graveyard, overlaying on both of these monsters, you can get a monster search, and on top of it, a spell and trap card search with both of these cards, being able to detach both for the added spell and monster search, depending on which ones you want to go for. You can even add Sophia, because then you'll have a draw power off of that card and a special summon power off of Pax, using both of those monsters to then overlay into your Magnifica, which can have the detach banish, so you detach the one you don't want to use for the banish, and being able to use that other monster to overlay on top of that Exosister monster on the field to then reuse the Michaelis the following turn for just more additional searches for the Exosister cards you need. But that is it for the deck profile. I hope you all enjoyed. Like I said, the support we got from the Power of the Elements was definitely very, very useful for this deck. And I hope to see some pretty good people using this, because it's definitely going to be a pretty meta-relevant deck. And I'm happy with the results of it, since we got the support of it from the Grand Creators Booster set up till now. And as always, until next time, please don't forget to leave a like and subscribe. And Kira Twig out.